Most people think football rivalries are about trophies, about bragging rights, about which country plays better football. But some rivalries carry something much heavier than that. These are three of those rivalries. And once you know the history behind them, you'll never watch these matches the same way again. Argentina and Britain go to war. The battleground is the Falkland Islands, a small cluster of islands in the South Atlantic that both countries claim as their own. The war lasts just 10 weeks. But by the end of it, nearly 900 soldiers on both sides are dead. Families shattered. A wound carved deep into both nations. Football couldn't stay out of it for long. 4 years later, 1986 World Cup, Mexico. Argentina and England are drawn against each other in the quarterfinals. Players on both sides know what this match means beyond football. The dressing rooms know it. The fans know it. The entire world watching on TV knows it. Then Diego Maradona, the greatest player of his generation, does something nobody forgets. First, he punches the ball into the net with his hand. Obvious to nearly everyone watching. The referee misses it. The goal stands. Maradona later calls it the hand of God. Then, just 4 minutes later, he picks up the ball in his own half, dribbles past 5 English players and the goalkeeper, and scores what is still voted the greatest World Cup goal in history. One goal was cheating. One was genius. Argentina won 2-1. For millions of Argentines, it felt like winning twice, once for football, and once for something a battlefield couldn't resolve. Now let's go further back, to a wound that runs even deeper. During World War II, Nazi Germany occupied the Netherlands for 5 brutal years, from 1940 to 1945. Over 100,000 Dutch Jews were deported and killed. Cities were bombed. Food was deliberately cut off, causing a famine that killed thousands of Dutch civilians in the final winter of the war. For the Dutch, Germany wasn't just a neighboring country after the war. It was the country that had tried to erase them. So when the Netherlands and West Germany met in the 1974 World Cup final, on German soil, it wasn't just the biggest match in both countries' histories. It was something else entirely. The Netherlands, led by Johan Cruyff, were playing the most beautiful attacking football the world had ever seen. They were favourites. They scored in the very first minute without a German player even touching the ball. And then they lost. 2-1. On German soil. In a final. The Dutch dressing room was reportedly devastated, not just because they lost a football match, but because of what losing to Germany specifically meant to that generation of players and fans. The rivalry never cooled after that. When the two nations met again at Euro 1988, the Netherlands winning this time, Dutch fans celebrated in a way that had nothing to do with football. Veterans of the war wept in the streets. Cities threw parties. At every World Cup where these two teams are drawn near each other, the entire Dutch nation holds its breath. Because for them, it was never just about football. And now for a rivalry most casual fans overlook, but one with perhaps the longest and most complex history of all three. For over 300 years, Brazil was a Portuguese colony. Portugal arrived in 1500, claimed the land, enslaved its people, extracted its resources, and imposed its language, its religion, and its identity on an entire continent. Brazil gained independence in 1822. But the relationship between the two countries never became simple. It never could, not with 300 years of colonial history sitting between them. When Brazil emerged as a football superpower in the 20th century, winning World Cups with a style of play that was uniquely theirs, expressive, joyful, unlike anything Europe had ever produced, it meant something beyond sport. It was a former colony telling its former ruler, "Look what we became without you." Their World Cup meetings have always carried that undercurrent. When Brazil faces Portugal, there is a quiet but unmistakable tension. The student versus the teacher, the colony versus the empire, a nation proving its identity through the one thing the world agrees Brazil owns, football. It's a rivalry not of hatred, but of something more complicated. Pride. History. The need to prove something that goes far beyond 90 minutes.